Hi everyone, welcome. Can you hear me in the back? Yeah. Thank you, back people. I need you. Thank you so much. Hi, thank you so kindly for joining us here at Green Apple Books on the Park. I'm Car Johnson, the events coordinator here, and I am delighted to, thank you, I am delighted to introduce hosts this evening, everyone's favorite, Ernest Pothier. Outer Sunset. This is Mark's debut novel. He is joined alongside Rebecca Handler. Let's give a hand for Rebecca for Outer Sunset. Thank you so much. Thank you for joining us both in person and online. Hello, online audience. You are here with us. We can feel you. We are broadcasting from San Francisco. We are on unceded Ramaytush Ohlone land, and we hope that you join Green Apple in our pledge to turn land acknowledgement into action each time you hear a land acknowledgement by either donating your time or monetary means to an Indigenous organization. Each time you hear it. Thanks, guys. Thank you. I have very brief business before we get to the fun part of the evening. Brief business. Now is a good time to silence your cell phones if you have not already. We highly encourage, if it's okay with our authors, for you to take photos. You can tag us. We love to share them and celebrate them. It's a very special day.
Flattering shots only.
Flattering shots only. You heard it here first. You can tag us at Books on the Park. Please do check out our full event calendar on our website. We have a really great season coming up, and if you like literary events such as the one you are currently attending, you might like what else we have to offer this season. The restroom is behind us. It is available after the event and not during the event. It is also only available to attendees of our event during event time. It's the one place in the store that my colleagues have that is off the floor, and we try to keep the integrity of it. So please, thank you for respecting that. We appreciate it. Thank you also for buying books from us. Some people pre-ordered, which is like so awesome. We really appreciate it. It's so helpful. I'll speak on Mark's behalf. It's very helpful for especially a debut author to have good pre-order numbers come in. It makes a big difference, and we appreciate it as well. If you've been here before, you've definitely heard me say that when you buy books from us, not only do you support us as an independent bookstore, you support the author who put so much work into writing this book, and then you get to have a book, which might be the best part. Yes. So thank you so kindly. We always appreciate it. We have other books too if you want to look at those. Without further ado, I'm going to go ahead and introduce two authors that are joining us tonight. First, Rebecca Handler is a writer who lives and works in San Francisco. Her website, onewomanparty.com, features flash fiction and nonfiction essays. Rebecca's stories have been published and awarded in several anthologies, and her debut novel, Green Apple, perennial favorite, Edie Richter Is Not Alone, came out in March of 2021. Let's give a hand for Rebecca Handler. And last but most certainly not least, Ernest Pothier's stories have won a Chicago Tribune Nelson Algren Award and been longlisted for the Pirates Alley Faulkner William Wisdom Prize. He holds an MFA from SF State, go Gators, a BA from St. John's College in Annapolis, and lives with his wife and kids in San Francisco. His debut novel, Outer Sunset, is the reason we are here tonight. So let's give another hand for that. Congratulations.
Thank you.
This is so exciting.
Finally.
We're going to have all sorts of nice chit-chat, but first, you're going to read a little bit for us and give us a little taste of Outer Sunset.
I will read you the first few pages. I have a special reader's copy. So I can take these off. All right. I won't give you any setup because it starts off. It's the beginning of the setup anyway. So, thank you so much for coming. 3 years ago, once it was clear our kids were gone for good, my wife packed the car with some clothes and things, told me she'd withdrawn half the savings, and after a farewell that I cannot recall verbatim, she left. Since that day, I've spent a good deal of my time reading in this back room. I drywalled this room, originally the porch, for Jackie. The house felt smaller when the kids were young, and one day she said we needed extra storage for earthquake supplies. There's no basement to speak of, as the entire neighborhood is built on dunes. I was still working then. I used to be a high school English teacher, so I had some spare time one summer, and we never expected the landlord to do anything. So for a few years afterward, Jackie made pickles, and she stored them in the corner where my chair is now. Sometimes that irony amuses me. The room is small, with 2 windows facing the backyard and a door between them. And it turned out it wasn't practical to have 2 windows in a room that would be used for storing pickles, but you can always pull the shade, whereas seeing outside without a window is another matter entirely. The room doesn't echo emptiness like most of the others, so I spend my time here comfortably enough. One thing can be said for aging in a certain amount of solitude. It helps you accept what you are and are not, and one thing I'm not is a carpenter. Nor am I a gardener. When my daughter Dorothy visited so often out of concern just after her mother left, she used to try to coax me back inside whenever she caught me sitting here looking out the windows at the flowers and the shrubs that her mother had planted years ago. Because Dorothy is the most attentive person I know, I believe she worried that even the least reminder of my wife would crush me. And I'm not as tender as all that, nor can you uproot recollections of more than 30 years so easily. So weeding through memories is a weed and chaff situation for me, and I try not to pull up either. Besides, I wasn't just sitting here staring at the yard, which is still quite overgrown. I was also reading the pile of books I'd always said I would if I was given the chance. And even now, when I look up to rest my eyes, I'm pleased to see the borders blur as weeds gain control and the roses dry to tangled dead buds. That progress marks the passage of time, and it soothes me whenever I feel bitter, the last thing any self-respecting man my age should allow himself to do after a drink. Another fact that I'm fairly resigned to is that I'm not, and never was, much of a writer. This realization was a bit trickier than with carpentry and gardening. Jackie might chuckle if I were to share that discovery with her now after so many years, but she's gone, and I've learned that the only way to be good company when alone is to be frank with yourself. I'll stop there. Sorry.
That was beautiful.
You're very nice.
From what I read, so this is our first time meeting in person. We've communicated a little bit via email, and we were going to meet up at like the Java Beach Cafe or somewhere else near the ocean. But then I suggested that maybe we don't meet up because I wanted to get all of my questions answered in front of all of your family and friends and other guests here.
Raise the stakes a touch there.
Exactly. You have said that you were working on this book for 30 years.
That's just good flap copy.
So what is that? I just feel like we have to address that first.
Yeah.
What does that mean? Is that true? Is that not true? Were you drawing each letter on a cave? Yeah.
Okay.
Tell me a little bit about that.
I'd be very happy to.
Yeah.
I am a slow reader and writer too, but there are a couple people here, Jim and Stephanie, who were in writing classes with me at the MFA program at State, where the story that is pretty much the first chapter was written or finished. And that grew out of a writing assignment we had with a great teacher, Michelle Carter, where she said, take a knotted moment from your life and then write it from both sides. So in this case, I cut the reading because it goes too long if I continue to this full scene. But the son moves in with the father, and there's a hug, there's a moment, and it came from a moment in my life because my dad was not a hugger when I was young, and then we did have one after my mother had left him, similar to Jim. Mm-hmm. And so I wrote it first in the son's point of view. Wasn't very good, and then I did, but I had the assignment had to be turned in, and I did the father's, and then my teacher said, Michelle's like, well, why aren't you doing this, and so I completed that into a story. Worked over many years on that, and by the time I graduated, it was about 4 years. That's the one that won the prize. So over those years, and I won't give you the full 30.
Year 2.
I was 34 then, and 60 when I finished this, and I had totally flipped sides. I totally understood the father's side. I have a much different relationship with my dad, who is still alive and a great guy, but it just took that long. We're very different people, and So the writing of it, I did in earnest start to draft, the action of this novel about 5 or 6 years ago, but it was stewing, and that those characters were always there. And I've done a lot with that story. I've had a lot of luck with it on its own, but going straight forward, that's where it really just took off.
That's a really neat exercise to write from like both perspectives.
Yeah, and to be able to let go of the one that doesn't work, and it's usually the one that you think is supposed to work.
Yeah,
the one where you think it's.
It's funny because you know how the film "Are You There, God? It's Me, Margaret" is out now, and so the book is getting a lot of attention again, well deserved, and everything. And I was thinking about how when I read books from my childhood now, I identify with the parents.
Yeah.
Whereas like I recently reread Ramona the Pest for the millionth time, which is like one of the books I read in the middle of the night if I can't sleep. And I was like, that mom. Like, it's so stressful to have Ramona running around the house getting into trouble. Of course, when I was little, I loved Ramona, but it's just funny you say that you identify with the father figure now. And like when you were at State, maybe that would have been different, right?
Yeah. Oh, totally.
Yeah. It's funny. So I also wanted to address, the cover is so beautiful. We were talking about it before. Yeah. And it does, the colors, I know it's abstract, but it really conveys, the fog and the sunsets and everything about Ocean Beach and the outer sunset. And I think it's just so beautiful. I feel like the place is so important to this novel. Like, I'm not sure this story could have taken place in another part of San Francisco. And I guess my question is, like, did it always take place in the sunset, particularly on dunes? Like, even when you say the house was on dunes, I don't know.
That was like what they call it, a dunne. It's one of those things that just, and then it was exactly, it's never been any other place. That house existed in that first story. I mean, it's such a set. It's such a stage for this. And the porch even is like a micro stage on top of the house. And when they were doing the cover, and I told you earlier, I think there were some apartment buildings and stuff. Didn't quite work the same way. The colors were the same, but so just go abstract. And then this whole vanishing and all these lines coming together in the writing of it, and hopefully for people reading it, especially if you're forced to do it multiple times, it's impossible for me to take it out of place.
There's this
they delivered a lot of stuff.
Sorry. One of my favorite lines in the book. There's so many great things. If you have lived in San Francisco for a long time, if you were lucky enough to grow up here like I was. Did you grow up in San Francisco?
No, we've been here since '87.
Okay. Well, you're more than. You've grown up in a little way here if you've been here since '87. There's all of these great things in the book, because I feel like there's so many novels that take place in San Francisco, but they take place in like techie San Francisco. And this is really like old school San Francisco. I mean, it's the late 90s, is that?
Yeah, it's 99.
Okay. So it's around that first boom bust situation was happening, right?
Things are really rubbing up, but not everyone was aware of it. And it didn't have quite the impact that we have now seen a couple cycles of.
Yeah. One of my favorite lines is when Jim is waiting for Carol on the beach, who's a woman he's hanging out with. I don't want to say too much, but his new friend, Carol. And she comes to meet him on the beach, and she's a little frazzled because she's late, and she says, "Sorry, wrong dune." and you don't pause on that. Like, she just happens to say that. And if you don't know the outer sunset, you might not think of anything. But if you've ever tried to meet anyone on Ocean Beach, you're always at the wrong dune. It's like, and then you can't see them because of the fog, and it's like a whole thing. So I love that so much. Thank you for that.
I'm really glad to hear that. I checked in with a number of people who have grown up and been residents of the outer sunset, and then we've lived in the outer Richmond for about 22 years now too. So. It's funny, it used to be a little different then. I remember it being just like it is now, all cold and gray. Because the last few years we've had so much sun and it's a lot brighter, and it's a more discovered place too, I think, than it was. But the people I know who've grown up there, they described a much different place. In fact, my dentist was saying that it was like spooky actually walking around the park sometimes for her as a girl. Yeah, depending on where you were and such. But I'm flattered to hear that it strikes home for you. I was curious, actually, if you don't mind me asking quickly, the Surf Theater, did you go there? Was there I've seen photos of it, but
I didn't go there. You're nodding.
I did.
Oh,
Yeah. So
yeah.
you, okay.
Yeah.
Cool. I'm
Was it
glad.
cool?
No, I
I mean,
didn't.
Yes.
Yeah.
My memory was I actually at the time did not live here. I lived in the East Bay, and I came on the Muni to see a particular film, and you would come, and then in total fog, and then disembark and go to the surf theater. And I think it had some neon, did it?
A little bit, but they also had every 3 days a different movie. So it was just
Foreign.
a lot of foreigners, a lot of
Yeah,
independent
sorry,
movies, but it a lot of rotation.
So for the folks online, we're talking about the surf theater.
Well, people who know it.
So another thing that I love in this book is I'm a big fan of public schools and public education, and Jim and SFUSD grad,
Our
two kids in
too.
SFUSD.
My wife's an administrator.
Oh, thank you. Happy almost summer. And Jim was a high school English teacher at Lincoln High School.
Yeah.
Which is in the Sunset, and has gone through a lot of changes over the years, and was recently held up as maybe one of the schools that needs to change its name.
Yeah.
Which we don't need to talk about
Another
that
story,
now. But yeah. That was interesting. And so what's your experience with public education? And also you mentioned to me that you're a substitute teacher, so let's just talk about that.
What was briefly, I went to public schools. I grew up until I was 15 in Massachusetts in really serious public school. I don't know what I'm saying. Everyone's very committed to public education, pays a high price for that too.
Where in Massachusetts?
Southwick, a little town west of Springfield. But at any rate, so here our kids went through the schools. They're both SOTA grads, and
His children are here tonight.
They are both here, yeah. And we just, I mean, I could go off on that, just like how many friends and how many people and all these kids that, like some of the kids, this is like Pavel is based on somebody I knew as a second grader, I think. You know, I just imagine him as an adult. But my experience, let's see, there's so many. One with Lincoln, the way I described it, is I had taken a GRE there back in '88. And it was stunning. It was bombed out. It was just like, it really was like there were fixtureless bathrooms, just everything was complete. Windows were shattered. There was like a patchwork of shades, you know, so we, you know, GRE people, we shouldn't have to sit, you know, move from desk to desk so that we could see our paper because the sun was so bright. But then I realized, what's this like for the kids? You know, it was a different era. Now it's much better.
Lincoln High School did not have the reputation that it has now.
Yeah.
It has an excellent reputation.
Yeah,
and the principal is incredibly devoted, and it's great.
Yeah, no, and the
But
facilities
back then it was not considered as good.
And then my subbing, I did that just partially to get a little experience, honestly, but also just some work and I needed to pick up. And so just before COVID lockdown, I did my final week of subbing as I was doing K through 8. I never went to Lincoln, but I did some of the others. But I got to go to my kids' school where they were first in kindergarten, and I subbed for our teacher. I mean, we know her; she's a local, and
the same teacher that your kids had.
Stacy Revitz.
Wow,
and
that's great.
And I had those same kids for a week because she was at the spreader event in Long Island at a bar mitzvah, and then she came back, and all these little moist kids were just hanging off me all the time. They're really, really, really affectionate,
moist kids.
And I got really sick.
We know exactly what you're talking about.
And so,
kids are really damp.
Yeah. Especially 30 of them.
Yeah. Oh, that's so funny.
I think I got a little covered there, but so I know Alamo very well. I got to work at all our kids' schools, really, and
awesome.
it was a pleasure. But we're very pro public schools when they just pull so many things together. People work better as a society once they've gone through a similar experience. And I'm not dissing private, but it's just the more commitment you make to it, the better it can work. So.
Absolutely. I also love that Jim. Well, I really fell for Jim. I mean, he's such a wonderful, deep, rich, funny, very funny. I don't even think he knows how funny he is. Do you find him funny?
I do.
Okay.
Yeah, but I don't. Yeah.
He's very quirky.
It's pretty dark.
And he kind of wants to do the right thing, but is a little not always doing the right thing. And I wrote a character like that in my book, and I felt like they should hang out sometime. So maybe we could do a project where they meet each other.
I told my daughter, I said, well, if you're upset that the daughter gets very ill in my book, you could read Rebecca's book where she snuffs her father.
That's true.
Not to ruin any scene.
If you like Outer Sunset.
The covers,
Just wait.
the covers even look alike.
No, there's not enough murder in your book.
Yeah.
That's my only problem. But I also love, one thing I love about Jim is that he mentions that he was in San Francisco in the late 60s, but he and his wife at the time were like grading papers. They were not involved with the like naked hippies in Golden Gate Park. And this is not really a question, but more of a moment to tell you that my mother lived in the Haight in the late 60s and somehow missed the whole thing. And so I just really related to that because growing up, I always wanted to hear stories about the Haight in the late 60s. And she was working as an elementary school teacher, and yeah, and then later she mentioned, oh, but I did go to a party at Janis Joplin's house.
And remembered it.
I was like, you could have mentioned that, like when I could have used that to be cooler.
No, I think that's an interesting
She's like,
point.
she was high. She was very high.
It's an interesting point because there are myths and just whole embodiments of a place that everyone knows about, just and especially the way we mediate so much experience now that to have something outside that is you're instantly going into the reality zone. That's very helpful. I've lived in a couple, through college. We were in Santa Fe. We did not have a turquoise and silver experience. It was really rough.
Not enough Adobe.
There was no couldn't keep a job for long, and the people were strange. The people that we were dealing with. It wasn't until I worked at the public library actually that I started to feel at home, and I realized that's because this is where real people were, not this other thing that was going on. Same thing with Annapolis, where we lived for a bit, and San Francisco gets so many different versions of itself marketed out there, and that's what was one of the pleasures of writing this, I got to say, because again, I couldn't leave that place, so the place had to come, I had to ride with it for a while, and I saw a much different city through this after point. Just really got, these are real people, this is what they're going to experience, and then that just unpeeled. Just kind of unwrapped stuff. Did
your writing process involve any specific research or looking at photos from that time, or is it all you were here? I mean, you were here at that time.
Yeah, I was definitely here.
It felt
things
so
like
real.
the surf theater. Those were details I added at the very end. I would usually just write something fake that you want to have in there. Like they're going to go to a movie show, and I actually had them going to the Balboa. I thought, why do they walk that far? And when she's a 15-year-old, she's got an attitude, they're not going to go.
Right.
But then there are these great books that are put out by one of the local historical societies. And, the ones that like the Richmond and all that. And
the yellow and black.
Yes, they're great. I actually need to write to them soon too. But I read those, and they have dynamite pictures and learning about how the Sunset was built up, and actually one of the very last places to be built in the city. I mean, it just kind of came from Parkside up, which is hard to imagine. I think partially because of the sand, and it's just also it was remote, and so it's nice to unlock the city a little more like that. And I think almost everyone who really digs into a story ends up doing that.
Have you been to any of those live events that's put on by this fantastic man, and I'm forgetting his name, I'm sorry, but they're like these live events where he shows old photos of San Francisco?
Rick Bellinger.
Rick Bellinger.
Prellinger.
Rick Prellinger, that's right.
Oh.
So oh my gosh, amazing. He's has all of these old photos of San Francisco.
Is he still doing it?
And he puts them up at the, I went to the Castro Theater, and he puts them up, and people are yelling out, oh, my mom used to live down there, or it's so cool.
That's nice.
I loved it. Anyway, highly
They're
recommend.
lucky to have grown up here. We wanted our kids to have that, and now they do. So,
I don't want to spoil anything, of course, but the daughter, it says this on the back of the book, the daughter comes home with some pretty devastating health news. And thus begins sort of this very delicate father-daughter dance that I just found very touching.
Okay.
And one of the things that surprises Jim is how his daughter is so matter-of-fact about her illness and sort of, I think he used the word commonsensical about it all.
Mm-hmm.
And I just love that you just really captured that so well.
Okay.
That when one person is going through an illness, the family is often like really distraught by their own matter-of-factness about it. So thank you for that.
Thanks.
Yeah, and I told you that so my novel came out a couple of years ago, and I was going through treatments for cancer. I'm fine now, but that part really resonated with me. That how the family's like, you're not upset enough, almost. You're like, but I'm living it all the time.
Yeah.
And I think like sometimes when a person is going through something where they're just faced with death and thinking about death more than the average person, say, other people are very confused by that. So basically my question is, how often do you think about death?
Almost daily. It's a part of life, right? I don't mean that in that funny way, but it's like, it's an unavoidable thing. It caps. And it's also when we have a friend who's here, who's a doula for both our kids, one of my wife's oldest friends. It was a beautiful, very important thing. But then, we've also, excuse me too, there's been death, and she was talking about, you read up the term death doula in one of your interviews. I heard that, and we were saying, shouldn't there be people like this? Because it's another process that it's unavoidable. You don't want to perseverate on it. You don't want to stew. But it's there. I grew up in the country, so there's farm animals. We saw a lot of disease and death there. But I also worked at 2 nursing homes before I was 15. I never thought of that before, and kind of got to know some of the patients pretty well. And I also worked in a mental hospital on a kind of people who had grounds privileges, so they would come into the cafe, and I would be there and. You make some really bizarre relationships with folks, but you also see something and get something. And they were drawn to me probably because I'm young. And all that stuff combined makes you think of people in a different way, and seeing folks facing more of those final issues helps you to understand how you might end up reacting yourself. But one thing is certain is that unless it's outside of a professional setting, like a mental hospital or as we called them then, or a nursing home, people are lost. And the more sentimentality you bring to that, and the more lack of experience with that you have, the more difficult it's going to be to just be frank. And people have almost always told me, I just want you to be yourself with me, be frank. So that's how it came. So no, I don't. I tend toward I like Dostoevsky. I read Montaigne essays. I just that's kind of part of my makeup. I was told I was a little grump when I was little. My parents called me the sitch. I don't know why, but I was cute enough. But here comes the sitch, So I guess it's just part of my nature there.
Well, there's beautiful passages. I mean, the reason I asked you that question, which I know sounded out of left field, but
it's a great question.
It's there's beautiful passages in this book, really philosophical passages about life and death, and especially as Jim is thinking about his daughter and what that means.
Well, my kids are very healthy, thank God, and but when you have them, God, you worry all the time.
Yeah.
Right? Especially when the babies.
It's our biggest fear.
Every freaking thing that could happen, you just go, and then they have a booger that's on the wrong side or something like that. And that's so
I'm just checking their noses.
You go through some test runs.
Right. Totally. Just to switch gears a little bit.
Thank you.
I'm sure your kids would love it if we spent more time talking about them. Just to switch gears a little bit, you and I both had our debut novels come out when we're not the youngest people in the room. We're middle-aged, sexy beasts. And what do you think, I have found it, I'll share with you after what I think about it, but why do you think that is actually to our benefit?
Oh, there are young people here.
What's great about having your first novel come out in middle age?
I came really close actually after this story was published in '94. when I won that prize, they flew my wife and I out. I was seated next to Annie Prue. She took my stories around. I got her agent. I was meeting some other people. It was like really quickly, and I was not ready. My writing wasn't up to snuff. I was rushing through this, and I'm by nature a little anxious about just too much action. You know, I just don't like to have things moving that quickly, and it kind of gently fell apart, and I kind of retracted too because I needed to get back in touch with how I felt. So that's one of the big upsides for me is that I finally felt okay, and then definitely through the process of writing this, you can't lie to yourself anymore. I mean, you just really, the rewriting is so much easier because like, that's bullshit. You just kind of like chop it off and then move forward. So there's that. And then your experience is just, like we said, like writing from the father's side. I'm older than Jim now. And that's a perspective I've earned and I'm also grateful to have, So I think all of those things, plus though, there's a lot of people our age that read now. And they have some time too, and they have interest. And that's a wonderful thing.
When you say that you weren't ready and your writing wasn't up to snuff, was it mostly that you felt like your writing wasn't at a point where you could be super proud of it, or was it more just like the psychological thing of having your book out there and people are going to read it? That's terrifying.
Might have been a little of both, but I think that if someone had said, "God, Mark, that's really deathless prose," I would have been okay. Okay, let's go.
Right.
And so, but I would have been taking their word for it, and it would have been a lie. And I think I was telling myself a little lie there. So I think both points are true. That the writing wasn't good enough. It might have become, but we needed to work to stay in the city, and I couldn't do both. I mean, to stew as deeply as you do on some of these things, you can do that and go to work the next day easily. So, yeah.
I think that we have more to write about.
Yes.
At our ages.
Yes.
We've been through a lot.
People,
I mean, I've just met you, but I bet you've been through a lot. Because I've been through a lot. And I also think that if you're going to put something out there and try to get it published, being as comfortable as you can with rejection is also really helpful.
Yeah.
And I feel like the process of, for me, finding an agent, finding a publisher, et cetera, it was just like, you got to really get rejected.
How long were you trying to do that? How long?
I tried to get an agent for about a year, and then it took us another year to get a publisher.
That's good.
So not too long.
Yeah.
I
But
guess.
I mean, how about the whole process of like when you start to write novels?
I started.
Book.
I started writing. Yeah, I have my one novel out now. I started writing that in 2016, I think, and then put it away for a little while. But then got an agent in 2019. I think.
That's a pretty good
publisher in
timeline,
2020, and then it was and then waited for a pandemic because I didn't want my book to come out without a pandemic.
So sorry.
So I waited till the real height of COVID to release it. Yeah. I requested that. I said I want only Zoom events. I don't want to leave my bedroom. That's how I prefer.
I saw one of those too. I said, "Oh man, I'm so glad that's not me."
Exactly. I know, and other authors would say, "Are you doing okay? Your book's coming out during COVID. This must be horrible." And I'm like, I don't know any different. I mean, but I think that hopefully I'll have another one come out, and then I'll be like, "Oh wow, people, this is nice."
Yeah. This is a good time right now. There's a lot of folks just getting out.
Yeah, totally. No, it's a great time. I'm trying to think. We got to get to Q&A, but before Q&A, and someone might ask you this, I just have to ask. It's so annoying. It's like when you have your first baby, people ask you when you're gonna have your second. That's all they care about. So I'm just gonna ask you: do you think?
Oh, for sure.
We're gonna have another.
I definitely do. I've got. That's.
I want to read it.
The other advantage of being old is I've got two in the can. I've got one I was working on, and I also have a memoir that I've always wanted to write. I'm gonna wait till later on that.
So you're dusting something off.
Well, the one that was
exciting.
not working when I was young, that's still there, and I might return to rewrite it. The things that are difficult for me is getting a story that goes through an arc, and like a big enough to be a novel with a full set of characters, and then I kind of write on that. That's more like there's a word for it, armature maybe. And but there was a second one I did that I'm pretty happy with, and I would love to jump back into that. And I'm going to do that once this is all done. This is a lot. The marketing of a book is a different thing for me. So I'll get started on that. But yeah, I'd love to do one every couple of years if possible. Before I become a dull and toothless plod.
Well, still, when you're dull and toothless, you can write from that perspective. We will all appreciate it.
No one will.
We will now start our official audience part of the program with Q&A, and I already see a hand up, so yay, please. And I will repeat the question for our viewers at home.
Congratulations, Mark.
Thank you.
Congratulations. So if debut you could go back and talk to 34-year-old you, what might the conversation be, and who would learn the most from whom?
Now.
Can I repeat the question?
Yes, please.
Okay, the question is, if debut you today could go back and speak to 34-year-old you, what would that conversation be like, and what would you say?
Okay. First of all, Anita knows that I did an essay like that in LitHub a couple weeks ago, so you can read that if you'd like to.
Oh, was she just teeing you up for it?
We don't know each other. But I will get to the
Who's
gist
your
of that.
favorite friend here? Anita wants to know.
I'll get to the gist. The gist is simply that I think it's what we've said, that you would, I don't want to sound like a bigger deal, but like I saw counseling, I started talking to people, I realized I got to do something different than the way I felt when I wasn't getting a book done. This was not normal. Why was I? And so that was a good thing to do. And so, and then I think that guy, the young guy, would tell me, like, don't let this go. Don't. This means enough to you, and you're doing it, and you've had some success. That's the thing. Just having a little success just keeps you, you keep going forward. And I had a very little one that I had to hang on to for a long time, And I also had friends who were writers and who were managing family and books and stuff, and they were always also an example to me, but I didn't know those folks yet at that age. So, Is that enough?
Yeah.
Thank you.
Good.
Anita and I we are still in the Poets and Writers publicity incubator for debut authors, the same cohort, and so we've known each other only through Zoom until tonight.
Oh, wow. So proud.
It's so cool.
And we have some nice friends watching too. Yeah.
So cool to meet people you've met on Zoom, and then you're like, oh my gosh, a full body.
They're real.
They have their pants on.
They can walk.
Yeah, exactly. Yes.
Hi, congratulations, Mark. I'm looking forward to reading the book. I'm curious if you could talk a little bit about your process and how you would structure your time with regard to work and who you would have looking at it and all that.
Questions about process and how Mark structures his writing time.
I was at a very lucky space lucky and unlucky at the same time, where I couldn't get the kind of work I wanted. So hence this subbing and stuff like that. So I had a lot of time. I also had a lot of, I bartered some office space for some communications work that I do. And so every morning for a while, I'd drive my daughter to her bus for school, and son's out of the house by then. And then I'd go and write longhand and just go, just like don't hold anything back. And did that for like 3 or 4 years. It's a stack of handwritten pages. And then the rewriting, and just threw a lot of that away. And the rewriting will happen on the computer. And so having the time apart from work that required my mind that's an enormous, I think it's really important for everyone to acknowledge that you might need that if you want to do that. And then after that, revision was a learning process too. But I was telling Rebecca I didn't have to go through any developmental edits with this. It was mostly copy editing by the time, because there's a great book by George Saunders that came out called A Swim in the Lake in the Rain or something like that, in the pond in the lake. and the rain. It's drips on. It's got a cover. Yeah, and it's the best description of the way revisions work for me. It's just you'll know, and then shapes will come, character stuff that it's you, but it's a relationship. So, does that answer?
Yeah.
Okay. Thanks.
Do you listen to any music when you write?
Not when I write now. I get really distracted by music.
Do you have snacks?
No.
No snacks?
Nope, no snacks.
Water?
Water, and
Coffee?
then you can have a coffee after you ride for 4 hours. I don't have enough time, so I'm just doing this.
You're a tough boss.
It wasn't always that. I also spent a lot of time thinking, oh man, I'm gonna drink and smoke and write and do this and that, and that doesn't work.
You have to keep your hands free. Right? No smoking.
Yeah, that's the 30-yearness, yeah.
Car, is there a question from someone online?
Yes, there is a question from our online.
Wow.
Diane asks, Mark, how did you know when your book was done?
Ooh, Mark, how did you know when your book was done?
Done, huh? This is kind of just an extra on top of Erica's question. You kind of know, and because other people who read. My wife is always my first reader, and my most critical, I think. And so when you get there, and if she wanted to make me feel like I wasn't totally if she can't lie to me is what I'm saying, and I can't be lied to by her, so that works out. You also know, though, more specifically craft-wise, just things are working. Like the characters have completely come out as much as they're going to come out. Some are going to be in the back. Like I'm really pleased with Jackie's guy. What's his name? Dick. Because because he's not a big deal, but he's a real cog in there, and that's just where he should be, right there. And there's even some acknowledgement of that on Jim's part, because Jim is kind of oddly omniscient in some weird spaces. So hopefully that answers it. Thank you. Anybody else?
Did your wife suggest something that you remember in this book? Or did you push on something? The reason why I'm asking is because my husband is my first reader, and we now have this shorthand, and sometimes he'll request something that I will change, and sometimes he'll or suggest something, and sometimes he'll suggest something that I'm respectfully, no.
I don't. She doesn't tell me what to do, and I do it. If there's a problem, there wasn't a lot of stress in writing this. This actually came a lot more cleanly. But there was a time I remember Key said, "You're really hard on the mother, Jackie, who is really different from almost anyone I know. She was more an amalgam in some ways than anybody else, and I was worried about that because I wanted her. She's beautiful, and he's got to go back to being whole, and part of that is understanding just that there is this person that he loves, and she's lovable, and she's done a lot of great stuff and lived with him and such. So he pushed on that, but didn't say, oh, you can't this line here or that. It's just more like maybe that seems a little harsh, and go back, that kind of thing. Yeah.
I got a question.
Yes, Matt.
So I'm wondering what role religion plays. I know, big question, but how does religion inform the story?
Ooh, how does religion inform the story? What role does religion play?
This was a question I had about Rebecca's too, because the husband's he's observant, and he's part of, but I'll take my responsibility first. It plays the role that it does in real life, I think. I think we're in this post-enlightenment spell where there's not this break of your soul on your body. There's a continuum, and what's spiritual informs everything right down to the hard matter and backward. So anything that you're doing with anyone, even this gathering here, there's a spiritual component to it. We're in communion, we're talking about real issues, we're talking about death, but we're also talking about other things and what makes character and people lovable and such. So that's there. I could say specifically the scene where Jim goes to the cathedral and faces off with, and this saint is truly there. but he doesn't belong. He's not a believer, and it's more a moment for him to face off with something that's in a way more pure, kind of scary, kind of weird, if you're not in that tradition or in that space. But for him, it called him to be very frank and candid with himself. I think he has a transformation of sorts just in talking through every story he brought about himself in that moment to that. So I guess the question, what role did religion play? That's, I think, the same role it plays in everything, really. But I couldn't make him converting or some kind of quest. I mean, he's not capable of it in this character.
Did it ever go in that direction?
Pardon? I think anyone goes through a big change.
But did the character, did you ever think of the character going in that direction, or no?
I've tried a few things, yeah. I mean, that was a very difficult chapter for me to write, actually. I really had to throw a lot of stuff away and rewrite it.
Did you go to any churches?
Yeah, no, I am.
Like the one that...
Yeah, I've been there, yeah. I actually, during COVID, I don't want to go into this because I'm no spokesman. My politics very left, but I'm now an Orthodox Christian. I became in communion with the Orthodox Church through COVID because it was easy to visit churches. You just go to Zoom. But I was there anyway. I mean, I was already, I'm kind of well versed in that theology and such. And I have been in the cathedral's gorgeous, but it's intimidating if you're not,
I love that in the story, it's Jim's son's girlfriend who ends up bringing him initially to that church. And I love that because it's sort of happenstance, but it's like...
I like that relationship very much.
I love that relationship. Yeah. I love her.
I do too. Thank you. I had to work on her to make sure I didn't want to be a caricature of her, but she's so authentic. She's just really, you do this, you believe this, you are this, Thank you. And then in your book, I always felt like the husband who's he's such a good, easygoing guy, and he's a practicing, I assume, a Reformed Jew, and then I thought he was becoming almost like, because her father was a really good man too, is the thing, and so and that was not announced as a theme. This was part of everyday life, and that's what I thought.
The characters just happen to be Jewish.
This is part. Well, no, it's in the religious. This is part of the whole world, and as it should be.
Yeah. Thank you. I mean, I'm Jewish, so I just wrote what I know.
Yeah, no, but
I liked the
the email because it's a real.
I wanted to show different types of Jews too.
Well, because she did such a thing, and she's dealing with such a crisis, and it's not until the end, my reading of the book, and I'm not ruining anything, is that she's finally, well, you switch point of view too, but she's clearly now able to make a choice again. I think that's one of the key dynamos we have is it's the choice. You choose to do good or bad, and she was choosing at that point. She's going to talk to Warren about this afterward and stuff. So I just finished again last night, so I remember.
Thank you. One more question.
Hi. Can you put a percentage on how much alike your relationship, Jim's relationship, was to his kids, and his kids' personalities are to you, or your relationship with your kids and their personalities?
So the question is, which kid does Mark like better? The question is Mark's relationship in real life with his children versus Jim's relationship with his children in the book. And in terms of, are the kids similar at all? And I just want to say that I love that a male author is getting this question because because so many female fiction writers get questions like, so I assume this is your real life. Is this about you? Yeah. But yes, please answer for us.
And first, this is my future sister-in-law. I mean, that's it. I'm supposed to officiate.
Hello.
Supposed to. We may not.
Do you officiate weddings now? It's part of your religion?
I don't.
We get you some extra.
No, you can do it. You sign up online, and then people like you do it. It's free drinks. I would say, I mean, you know, family, and I don't see my daughter Sage as much like Dorothy at all. But I saw a lot of Gabe in Gerald, and I don't want to embarrass him or go through any of the parts that become weird about those questions that you just described.
I know.
But my son has some of the good qualities. What's that? My son has a lot of the good qualities that Gerald does.
There you go.
How hence that, right?
Yes. Very well.
Well done.
I mean, both children in the book are wonderful.
Thank you.
So it would be a compliment.
So are
to
mine.
be
So are
compared
mine.
to them.
But Sage is much different than Dorothy. She has different interests and such.
Well, before we wrap it up, any last questions? Or I think no. Oh yeah. Okay.
I could ask questions all night.
Okay. Give us. How about you're our last question for the evening?
I'm just curious how well you felt you knew Jim at the start of writing the novel compared to when you finished it, and did it surprise you how he grew or how he evolved?
So when you started writing the novel, just repeating, how well did you know Jim, and then compared to when you finished the novel?
I absolutely know him right down to the molecular level now. And I also, what changed was I liked him less when I started, but he's a character I could never get around. And so, in a way, maybe to work through that, it was a great experience to have to go into this character. Remember, I told you earlier in the beginning that this was this version of my father that I was having trouble with, and like I said, I've got a different relationship with him. Part of that's from writing the story, and then, that would be the change. Like I had a distance, and to write any character deeply, no matter what they do, you have to inhabit that. And with him, it was full on for a while. So I know him, and I'm honestly toying with a sequel. I'm not sure. I just got so used to these people, and I could see stuff happening in 20 years hence. And I don't know who will still be around there, but these people, a couple of them have some more things to do.
We want to see what happens with the house.
The house is done. Yeah. Thank you.
Well, Mark, a huge congratulations to
thanks
you
so much.
on all your It's sensational. So Mark's book, Outer Sunset, is available here tonight.
As is Rebecca's, and thank her, please, for this wonderful. So interesting.
My pleasure, and a huge thank you to Carr and Green Apple Books. Books on the Park. So we wish everyone a wonderful evening. Thank you.
Thank you.